The human body is an amazing machine that's composed of a number of systems and processes that help to support life and, of course, optimal health. One of the most intricate systems that we'll be focusing on today in our new Women's Health feature is all about hormones. And to enlighten us on this topic is Dr. Mark Opperman. Mark, welcome back. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be back.
Now, Mark, we've spoken about hormones in the past, and I think as we start a new season and we're now specifically focusing on women's health, let's just reiterate, what are hormones? Because most of us associate them with pregnancy, moodiness, and things like that, but they're so integral to life, as the introduction stated.
Michael, I think the first thing that we need to understand is that hormones are chemical messengers. They are made in specialized cells, and we call that the endocrine system, and they're released into our bloodstream. Now, for that reason, they affect organs right throughout the body. So we can have an effect on glands, and we can have an effect on an end organ itself. It's a very, very complex system, and it affects all aspects of life, from our immune system to our gut, to our emotions, growth, development, reproduction, etc., etc.
Okay. And I mean, we've also spoken quite recently about the neurological impact of hormones and the imbalance of them and how that can affect you.
So actually, if we look at the majority of our hormones, they're made in the brain. In my practice, what I do is I always use the analogy of, for women, a cake, baking a cake. Now, let's say that you have an award-winning recipe. Everything there is done in a specific ratio, specific sequence, specific temperature.
Yeah.
The moment that you alter one of these, the cake's slightly different. The problem that we have is when we start changing one of the ingredients or the quality of one of the ingredients, the final cake turns out differently. And this is the problem that we have with hormone replacement therapy, or with the causes of hormone imbalances. One ingredient changes or is not available, and that has an effect on the whole cake.
Yes, yes.
If we look at women, for instance, women are aware that they have estrogen, and estrogen is actually a group of different hormones.
Okay.
There's 3 of them. This is usually made in the ovaries. The majority of our estrogen comes from the ovaries. But there's 2 very important things that's responsible for making the estrogen in the ovary. The first one is called DHEA, and that stimulates, it's a pro-hormone, and it stimulates the production of testosterone. Without testosterone, we make very little estrogen.
Okay.
The majority of our estrogen comes from testosterone. So yes, when you change one, it has an effect not only on the function of another hormone, but can have an effect on the hormone in itself, that it changes, creating further imbalances down the line.
Okay. So now we're familiar, as I said earlier, in terms of sort of the sex hormones. A lot of people are aware of those ones. What are some of the other hormones that we need to be aware of in terms of the bigger system? And I know it's a very broad question, but maybe just a few ideas of some different hormones and what they specifically are doing in our bodies.
Now, let's look, for instance, at your steroid hormones, which is the majority of them.
Right.
They all come from cholesterol. That tells us if you do not have healthy cholesterol, you're not going to make healthy steroid hormones, including cortisol, testosterone, and estrogen. Now, in the steroid hormones, we have our sex hormones. 2 groups there. You have your androgens, which is your testosterones and its derivatives. So we usually think of androgens as male hormones. And then we have our estrogens, which is 3 hormones in itself, and progesterone. So those are the 3 sex hormones.
Okay.
We need each of them at different stages of our lives, whether you're male or female. an imbalance in one leads to problems in all of them.
Okay, okay.
So if we have an imbalance in estrogen and progesterone, for instance, we can develop things like polycystic ovarian disease. We will have infertility. We will have problems maintaining pregnancies. When we have problems with testosterone, here we look at higher function that's affected. An increase in testosterone in women can lead to hirsutism, where you become hairy, or virilization, when you become a little bit manly. Shortages of those hormones has an effect on a lot of systems.
Okay.
I classify them into 6 big groups. For me, when we look at them, the first one and the most obvious sign in men and women is changes in sexual behavior.
Okay.
Now there we have 2. We have libido, which is a higher function. That's where we think about sex. And then we have sex drive, which is the frequency with which we want to either initiate or engage in sexual activities. Mood disturbances, whether it being mood swings, irritability, anxiety, depression. Imbalance in your sex hormones will lead to one of those symptoms. Okay. We have higher function, cognitive and brain function. And here we look at things like the ability to concentrate or to maintain focus, your motivation to get things done and the drive that you have to do this. We go further and we look at memory. When there's changes in memory or the inability to remember things. We've spoken in previous episodes about brain fog. Now, for me, so many of us present with some form of brain fog. And this in itself leads to emotional disturbances. We feel irritable, we feel angry, we feel insecure. Our energy metabolism takes a nosedive when any of these hormones are out of whack. Fatigue. So many people present with fatigue, and there's a very strong correlation between chronic fatigue, hormone imbalances, and some of the things that are affected by things like COVID that throws out some of the precursors of hormones. Vitamin D, for instance, which is not a vitamin, it's a hormone, iron, etc., etc. Weight. Changes in weight is one of the major symptoms of hormone imbalances. Either weight gain or a redistribution of body composition. So suddenly I start looking like a pear. All of these have a great impact on physical well-being. How good are you feeling physically? How good are your physical abilities still? Pain, inflammation that leads to pain, gut disturbances, bloating. Bloating is a very good indication that you are starting to develop menopause because there's a change in hormones. All our sex hormones are metabolized in the gut, and there they have metabolites that are active on so many things.
Okay.
So in my practice, when there's a change in quality of life, we try and establish what that is caused by, and by balancing these different systems, the thyroid system, the hormonal system of your sex hormones, gut health, etc., etc. By bringing them all together, we have an increase and sustained quality of life.
Okay. Now, Mark, we talk about an imbalance of hormones, but what is it that initially starts or triggers that imbalance in the hormonal system, which then cascades down the line and ultimately could be quite destructive?
Michael, I think the first thing that we need to realize is there's a chronological progression, and as we get older, systems start shutting down. We start declining both in strength, speed, stamina, And that's the natural progression. So firstly, that's what triggers all of this.
Okay.
Now, in today's society, we live longer, so we can mitigate some of those, and we stay alive physically.
Yes.
But hormonally, we decline.
Okay, okay.
Lifestyle, very big role to play here. Stress, diet, and when we look at diet, the main culprit here is sugar, alcohol. Other things like smoking has a detrimental effect on our lifestyle. Sedentary people not moving
Yes.
is one of the worst things that we can do. So those are the biggest ones
Right.
that affect medication. There's so much medication available, and most of them have side effects. If we look at our antidepressives, for instance, antidepressants lower testosterone levels. This will have an effect on sexual functioning, either libido, sexual performance. That in itself leads to changes in how we're going to relate to your partner. The major cause of sexual dysfunction in someone is sexual dysfunction in their partners. So there's so many things that will trigger imbalances in hormones.
Right.
And it starts from a very young age.
Okay. So Mark, we are over the series going to be exploring a whole lot of the detail around hormones and hormonal balancing, especially in women. So I think we've got a lot to look forward to. But in the meantime, if people want to find out any more from you, how can they get in touch with you, Mark?
Michael, the best way to get in touch with us is to go onto Google, type in VIT Clinic, and you will find us there.
Okay.
We have a number in Joburg. The number is 010-824-1393.
Wonderful.